Do you like what we do here? I would assume so if you're listening to this. We have had a good year for growth this year. We've had substantial growth on all the podcast feeds with new subscribers. We have the new YouTube channel with a bunch of new subscribers there too. But we want to carry this over into 2026 so we can continue to provide high-quality entertainment, high-quality news, high-quality reviews, and all that kind of stuff. So what we're asking for going into next year is, if you have the ability, we're not asking for a lot, you can donate. Go to ko-fi.com/MWP News and make a donation. Everything you do goes towards making sure we can do things. That way I can take days off work to go and cover things early, or, things of that nature. Go to events and talk about them early, see advanced screenings. All that stuff goes into that budget. On top of that, if you can't afford that, and I realize right now things are tough and things are rough out there. If you can't afford that, the easiest thing you can do is subscribe and rate. No matter what you use to get this podcast, you can subscribe. Just hit the follow button, hit subscribe, whatever the button is on your thing, and then rate us. Give us 5 stars. That'll help more people find us, and the more people find us, the more we can, the more we'll be able to do, and we'll be able to get, more happening. You can also go to mwpnews.com and sign up for our newsletter. There we will have articles and stuff like that about what we cover on this show. And we will also be doing more gaming content on the YouTube channel. If we can get, with more subscribers on there, we can do more. And that's youtube.com/@MWPnews. And again, thank you for a great year for us. Next year will be better. One of the big issues that I had this year that preempted me from doing a lot of what I wanted to has been resolved with the issue with, my car, and that issue has been resolved. So going into this next year, we should be a lot more smooth sailing, but we do need your help to get more people listening and get what we're doing here out there. So just subscribe, tell your friends, and if you have the ability to, and you have the money, and you want to, and you think we're doing a good job, and we've earned that, go to ko-fi.com/MWP News and throw us whatever you think we deserve. And thank you, and enjoy this episode. Good evening, and welcome to Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. I am Adam. It is very cold tonight, and I'm getting that. Do you ever notice that, there's a weird thing where it's when it's super cold, it doesn't feel quite as cold as when it's, right around, mid-30s, what it is today. And I'm waiting for my car to heat up, and so if I sound a little bit weird, that's why. So, we got some news. Last week we talked about, because there were some early writings on the wall that's going to happen, and here we are. Kathleen Kennedy has officially stepped down. Dave Filoni is going to be taking over with, I forgot her name, or I believe it's a woman. They will be taking over operations at Lucasfilm in a very Peter Safran and James Gunn type situation. Filoni will be taking over the creative control of Lucasfilm's story, while she will be taking over the business side of things. And holy fuck, it is weirdly cold. What does this mean? And I think that we talked a lot about what this would hypothetically mean when this happened. You motherfucker. We talked a bit about that when we did the initial episode about this. And we said we really can't say. That said, she gave an exit interview, a public exit interview, where she kind of talked about some of the projects that are still in development. And we're going to talk about the theatrical side of things in this episode because I think we have a good sense of streaming. And from what I read, there wasn't a ton of information on streaming. It was mostly the theatrical. So, on the theatrical side of things, what we can now definitively say, I know it sounds like I'm amped or something, it's just the temperature and all of that. We can now definitively say that she is, she is leaving Lucasfilm with 4 development projects in near production-ready states. And this is what she said about those. So there are 4 projects. 1, James Mangold's movie, Dawn of the Jedi, about the origins of the Jedi Order. We knew about this already. Then there is Donald Glover's Lando movie, originally intended to be a Disney Plus show, announced as part of Disney Plus Day back in 2021, I believe, or late 2020. Languished in development hell, and now has been reworked as a movie. That script has been turned in and is good. Taika Waititi has a movie that has also been turned in and is funny and is good to go. And the third one that has not been that is not dead yet is The Search for Ben Solo. What they outright say in this interview is that it's like, yeah, we have that script. It's going to be up to not me to decide what goes into development. She also says that the next project after Starfighter, because right now, what we have right now is Mandalorian and Grogu in May. Then next year in May is Star Wars Starfighter. Then Mangold is on the back burner, as is Soderbergh's. I think the ones with Taika Donald are somewhat alive. It's going to be up to the new team to figure that out. But they are very much on board with what Simon Kinberg is doing. Now, let's take a step back from all of this, and what does this mean? What this is doing is this is the outgoing president laying the groundwork for what to expect in the future, and where she's leaving things. And it's like, this is the table that I've set. And this is an important thing for her to do, considering that, she has had a tumultuous time as the head of Lucasfilm. She has overseen the Disney Plus stuff, which has been good at times, sometimes great, sometimes not great. Oversaw all of that. Project Luminous, which eventually became the High Republic, was under her. The sequel trilogy, obviously, all of these things have all existed under her because she's run Lucasfilm now for 12 years. And now Filoni is going to be taking over the reins. Herein lies kind of the place that she's in now. During her time, she has been the target of a ton of unfair criticism from people who, from the onset of this, were against Disney owning Star Wars. Out of the gate, there's nothing this woman could have done that would have appealed to a certain subset of people on the internet who masquerade as fans. And we've talked about this quite a bit on this show. So herein lies, I keep saying that. Here's where she needs to go right now. She needs to lay out, look, this is what I have left the next person with. The next person has 4 movies, and then this trilogy that Simon Kinberg is working on the table. And we have all of these ideas and all of these things that are being worked on, but the thing that Filoni appears to be very interested in is this Simon Kinberg series. Now, let's keep in mind, Starfighter will be taking place after The Rise of Skywalker. It is taking place after the sequel trilogy. It may end up bridging to what's it called? They made it being the bridge title to whatever the sequel trilogy ends up being, New Jedi Order or whatever. That was the weird thing, is that they didn't really offer an update on the Charmin Obaid Chinoy title, but it is possible that just got folded into the Simon Kinberg thing, and it's just going to be one project. And here's the thing. I think that, you know, what she's doing is laying the groundwork for an immediate tumultuous beginning to Filoni's time as head of Lucasfilm. I don't think she was forced out. I mean, I've said it before, the woman has so many credits and so much money coming in royalties, with a long production career going back to the 80s. She didn't need to take on the job at Lucasfilm, let alone continue on doing it for over a decade. None of that was necessary, but she did it anyway. And, you know, I think that a good amount of her decisions worked. Not all of them, obviously, but a good amount worked. And I would say that is probably the best way to assess her tenure as head of Lucasfilm. But what she's doing is, immediately, she's trying to set up, it seems like she's trying to set up kind of a conversation almost immediately to put this same level of pressure on Filoni. The same level of pressure that was put on her for her entire tenure as head of the studio. And it's like, look, I don't know if that's definitely not like a personable thing to do, but even if it wasn't her intent, that's what she's doing with this announcement. Because what you're saying is, like, look, we announced all this shit. And notably, of the things she talked about, she did not talk about Filoni's movie. And I don't know if that is Filoni didn't turn in a script, or turned in a script and it wasn't great, Filoni didn't turn in a script yet, or if it's just abandoned, or what's going on with it. Like, all of that is up in the air. We don't know any of that. But it's the only project that was announced that was not talked about, with the exception of the New Jedi Order standalone movie. But who knows if the Simon Kinberg trilogy is taking the place of that. There's a lot that we don't know. And that's kind of what we have with this broader conversation. That's kind of what, we're looking at here. So at the end of the day, what do we think is going to happen here? Now, Filoni is going to be left with a few options. If she's not blowing smoke, and she's being honest about it, and Filoni really does like the Simon Kinberg stuff, I think that is something that I'm apprehensive about. On the one hand, one of the things I've talked about at length on this is I want to see more things expand out past the end of the sequel trilogy, or flesh out the area after the original trilogy and see that. So the idea that Simon Kinberg is going to be exploring that, and that's something that he likes. And she even says that, like, hey, that might be that very well could be the next thing that goes into production after Starfighter as the next big thing, and that will take us through the 2030s, into the 2030s. And maybe she's right. Maybe that is the case. It's the Simon Kinberg of it all that concerns me, because Simon Kinberg, I don't want to say is tremendously overrated, because I think that implies he was ever positively rated to begin with. I don't like what he has done. He most notably has worked on the X-Men movies, and look, again, here's the issue. Let's use sports terms for this. When you have a quarterback who does very well with one team and then does poorly with one team and then goes to another team in a different system, you're like, oh, okay, well, they found the fit for him that works. Simon Kinberg directed Dark Phoenix, and Dark Phoenix was rife with studio interference. He does not work well within that system. Now, I believe he also did the 355 after that. I did not see the 355, but I believe it was, I seem to recall it being just fine, so I don't know how much higher we can take his directorial abilities to be giving him like a Star Wars movie, but what we do know from one of the higher profile movies he's directed in the case of Dark Phoenix is when he's put in a situation where he is where he is dealing with intense studio scrutiny, intense studio interference, and stuff like that, it does not work. The name of the game at Lucasfilm for the last 13 years has been intense studio interference. If you are working on a Star Wars movie, you are going to have a metaphorical, like, hand up your ass the entire time your movie is being made, while they figure out what it is that is being done here. And why the fuck are we going 30 on this highway? You dumb motherfucker. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, that's what you're signing up for. That's what, you know, Lord and Miller signed up and ended up, you know, being fired or leaving over, which ended up with the final result of Solo being what it was, with Ron Howard finishing the movie. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and if you are signing up to work with Lucasfilm, you are going to work with a studio that is going to butcher your movie. You are not making your movie. You are making their movie. The best way to put it is you're a TV director who's coming into a show that's already in progress. You're not there to make your own thing. You're there to work within their system. Unless you're doing something like, you know, The Search for Ben Solo or Taika Waititi's movie, or if you're doing one of these standalones, you probably have a little more wiggle room because it's not meant to be like this big overarching thing. Here's a smaller, more niche story anyway, and then you have more freedom to do that. That's how you end up with like The Mandalorian and stuff like that. But the idea that he's going to go into this and do what is subjectively, from the looks of it, episodes 10, 11, 12, as a continuation of the Skywalker saga. If that's the case, then I don't know if this is necessarily a good fit. What you need is, and I've used this analogy before, is you need a good system quarterback. You need a good game manager quarterback. You need a good Brock Purdy, who can get results regardless of who's on the field with them. Who doesn't need the great receivers all around him, who doesn't need all these things. He will make it work. Or your Patrick Mahomes. Or not really, because you guys need someone who can, because you need your Brock Purdy. That's the best way to do it. And I don't think Kinberg can do that. Kinberg, to put it in football terms, is Geno Smith, because he's not good, and he doesn't work in any system. And if we're gonna put all our eggs in that basket as what will be ostensibly the first big thing announced by Filoni, I don't know if that's a good idea. I think Filoni should, because here's the thing, there's really three options that Filoni can take. Number one is put this into production and go right into, okay, we're going to do what Lucasfilm did back in 2012 when it was acquired by Disney to begin with. We're going to launch into the next trilogy, and we're going to do that immediately, and that's going to be our big project. Now, keeping in mind this is a little bit different because they've been in development in this project for 2 years already. They're not rushing in without a trilogy completed, which was kind of the problem with the sequels. So it inherently won't be as disjointed, especially if Kinberg is directing all three and they commit to Kinberg directing all three regardless of the outcome of what goes on in the first two, whether audiences like it or not, and they don't try to change on the fly. That will work a little bit better. That's option one. Option two, they go into one of these niche titles and you take a step back and it's like, look, we're going to let these highly trained filmmakers do what they do, and we're going to let them do their thing, and we're going to hope for the best. And that is probably the best bet. I trust James Mangold. I trust Taika Waititi. I trust, even with Thor, Love and Thunder being what it was, I trust Taika Waititi to make a serviceable movie. And then option three is he rushes into production on Heir to the Empire, and he tries to do what James Gunn did, which is like, I'm in charge now, and I'm going to put my thing first. which I don't think is a possibility, or I don't think is on the table, but it is always a distinct outlier possibility. Here's the thing with all of this. The other thing that makes me apprehensive about Filoni is not just his perpetual hand job of the original trilogy, that he's got the carpal tunnel setting in from that. It's not just that. That is a problem that I have with Filoni, but it is not the entire problem that I have with Filoni. It's part of it. The other problem is he is now running a studio. And look, you oversaw You oversaw some of the Disney Plus content. You had a big hand in The Mandalorian and in Ahsoka and in all this stuff. But you're now doing this entire thing. Someone who came up through Avatar: The Last Airbender, working as a line animator there, then going over to Lucasfilm and Lucasfilm Animation and working on the Clone Wars and coming up that way and doing Rebels. I don't think that necessarily puts you in a place where you are qualified to run an entire multimedia studio and run the story group for an entire multimedia studio, in the same way that, I wouldn't trust, J.J. Abrams to do this, or trust, it was different when Gunn did it. When they put Gunn in charge of DC Studios on the story side, Gunn worked very close with Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige, who came up as a line producer working with people like Kathleen Kennedy and with people like, he came up through the X-Men movies, and he came up through that side of it. So, that it makes sense. And then Gunn was integral in more of the cosmic side of the MCU, so he got to see that up close, and then he was a big part in, Infinity War and Endgame. So then for him to go on from there to DC Studios, it makes sense. It's okay, we need to build an interconnected universe. Hey, here's a guy who worked very closely with Filoni. That's something that I trust him to be able to juggle all these things and do all this stuff and handle these big budget movies. So that's the other thing too, is that it's he didn't just direct a bunch of movies for Troma and then go on to do this. He was directing Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a $250 million movie, and being a producer on the Avengers and being a producer on Favreau probably would have been a better choice, but I don't think Favreau wants to be tied down to be a studio head. But at least you could see the track through where it's okay, I see why this makes sense. Filoni loves what he's worked on, and I totally get that. You love your own. It's like you're loving your own creation. Everyone who creates does that. I totally understand that. But does he have the ability? How much of what he is doing, as that, up until this point, can oversee this giant thing. And herein lies kind of the issue too with Lucasfilm, is that it's the thing with Superman and now Supergirl this year, and Clayface and all of that, is you're not dealing with just the creative side and he's going to be the showrunner. The showrunner of a TV show does not also need to coordinate the marketing side. The showrunner of a TV show does not also need to coordinate the merch and be we're going to do X, Y, and Z. They'll have a say in it, and and depending on what the show is, they may have a lot of say in what merchandise gets put out and stuff like that. But by and large, that's not their job. I mean, arguably, I don't know who at Lucasfilm would have been a better choice to oversee this side of it, but I mean, look, you're putting someone in charge with him who's also on the financial side, who can handle that too. But also, nothing that Filoni has done is inspiring me with confidence as to what's going on in a broader sense in this grand universe whose timeline spans thousands of years. And there's a lot of space to do new things and experiment and do all of that. I don't see that being exactly what we need from Filoni. I see him doing his own stuff and being like, yes, this sounds good, but like, if DC Studios announced they were putting Kevin Smith in charge of their story, and like, even if he wasn't directing and he was just kind of okaying what projects were good, I'd still be a little apprehensive about it, because first and foremost, he's a fan. He's got reasonably good taste, or somewhat good, some good taste sometimes, but I wouldn't want him dictating the things that he likes as codified law. And I don't think that that's something that I necessarily need from Filoni either. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Celebration's a few months away. I'm sure at Celebration they will give some update. But the idea that, like, okay, well, here are 4 projects that are in development, that it's just up to him to greenlight, it's not my call anymore. And also, he really likes this other thing. Like, the fact that she phrased it that way, like, I got these 4 great scripts, and it's up to him what he wants to do. These are kind of forefront, these are back burner. And there's also the Simon Kinberg thing that he really likes. It indicates to me that she may not have been as on board with that. And I don't know, the pedigree of Simon Kinberg being one of the leading things does not inspire me with a ton of confidence. No offense to Simon Kinberg, but like, I've seen what you do when you're under the pressure of a major studio that's trying to order you around and tell you how to do things and kind of, you know, call the shots for you while you're trying to make your movie. And I've seen the outcome there, and it was not good. It was just kind of bland and boring. And it's like, if this is going to be our second outing into the, you know, the post-Skywalker saga era, you really got to inspire me with some confidence. And I think that, like, that's the thing, is that it's like, even if you want to say that, like, oh, well, you know, Kathleen Kennedy's tenure did not, you know, left a lot of people unhappy, great. What about this slate, which is mostly stuff that she has done, or has had a hand in, is going to make people want to jump in and do more? I think your best option is to find someone who really wants to tell a Star Wars story and let them tell a fucking Star Wars story. If Steven Soderbergh wants to tell this story with Adam Driver and do this thing, fucking let them. Because let the passion project shine through. Star Wars began and its origin exists as a passion project. Why not? You know, that's the legacy that should be honored with this franchise. Let someone who, and that's the thing too, is that's like, you always hear people talk about, like, oh, I got into acting, I got into movies, I got into this because of Star Wars. Star Wars is part of so many people's origin stories. Just lean into that. And, like, let the people who have a deep love for this thing tell the story they want to tell. And I get that putting Filoni there is you know, is part of that. But I've seen the story Filoni wants to tell, and Filoni just wants to play with his action figures that he had when he was 10. Like, let's let other people play in the toy box. But we'll wrap up there for today, and we'll be back with more news as it happens. This will probably be a developing story over the course of the next few weeks. Until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.